good evening, everybody. Welcome to Attleboro Public Library. The library has long been one of my favorite places in the city. And as Franklin Roosevelt once said, libraries are essential to the functioning of a democratic society and great symbols of the freedom of the mind. I'm sure most of you will agree that democracies need libraries. Indeed, democracies are about discourse, and an informed public engages in more meaningful and productive discourse. So for these reasons and more, I cannot think of a better place to host State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, who is deeply and fully committed to ensuring transparency and accountability in state government by sharing information and facts about its deliberations and machinations. State Auditor DiZoglio has been in office since January 23 and represents the entire Commonwealth as the youngest serving statewide constitutional officer. I can't say that. Yay! The auditor was born to a 17-year-old single mother and has always fought for things that mattered to her, like ethics and justice. The auditor was a student of Massachusetts public schools, went to Middlesex Community College, and later earned a financial scholarship to Wellesley, where she double majored in psychology and Spanish. In 2012, the auditor was elected and served 3 terms as state rep for the 14th Essex District. In 2018, she was elected to the state Senate, where she served for 4 years. All prior to becoming state auditor, so the auditor has certainly earned her way up. One of the things I like about Auditor DiZoglio is that she works every day to make sure that no one, no matter their background, their zip code, their bank balance, receives different treatment from Beacon Hill. She uses her experience, professional and life experience, to fight for transparency and accountability for the people of Massachusetts. And as an elected official and as a resident, I love what you're doing. I am right there with you, my friend. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to welcome State Auditor Diana DiZoglio to speak to us all here tonight. But before we do that,
thank you.
I have a tradition of swagging up elected officials.
Oh, I love it.
So I'd like to present you with a little bit of Attleboro swag, Auditor, when you're walking around the Commonwealth.
I love it. Hey.
You're very welcome. And here's a card from me and Amy, too. So
that's fantastic.
You're very
this.
welcome. Wear it in good health, Auditor.
Blue pride. I love it. You know, I often talk about how Attleboro reminds me of my hometown of Methuen, and we're Ranger Blue as well. And we say we bleed blue in Methuen, hometown pride. So I love the hometown pride here, Mayor. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Wear it in good health.
Thank you. Everybody, can we give it up for Mayor DeSimone? Thank you so much for everything. And thank you so much to the Attleboro Public Library, to Amy and to Darcy and to everyone who hosted us here today. Thank you so much for making this room available to us and this space available to us. Support our public libraries, my friends. Absolutely. They have been having challenging times through the last few years, and during my time in the legislature, I remember working alongside of you to advocate for adequate funding and resources for you to be able to continue to make these spaces available to all of us in the public who need access to these spaces. So thanks for your hard work. It does not go unnoticed. And can we please give a round of applause as well to our great library workers. Mayor, thank you to you for being such a gracious host. Thank you for your invitation. Most elected officials up at the State House, these days at least, are not running towards me when I walk into the room. They're kind of running in the other direction. So Mayor, I really appreciate the opportunity to come here at your invitation to talk about the need for increased transparency and accountability in government, talk about our local and state partnerships where the state can work together with the local municipalities on conducting some of our reports, some of our analyses that we do, and also making sure that you're getting your fair share when it comes to funding from the state. Thank you for your partnership with your community and inviting everybody out today to not just hear from me, but also have the opportunity to engage and to ask me whatever questions you have today. I'm hoping that this will be a meaningful dialogue. And I'm happy to very briefly let you know what's going on in my office, but I really do want to hear from you, the residents, about any questions that you have or any comments that you have as well. It's my honor to be able to join you. And I also want to say, great to see a lot of the local officials here tonight and candidates as well. I know it's a busy time of year with election season underway, but I'm excited to see that there is robust effort going on here and that so many people have stepped up to serve, Madam Mayor. That's fantastic. So I will just begin with because the mayor introduced me. I'm Diana DiZoglio. I am your state auditor. Yes, I was born to a 17-year-old single mother in the city of Methuen, where I was born and raised and still live. I live about a mile from the hospital I was born in and about a mile from the high school that I graduated from. I went to community college, which was an associate's degree that I was able to afford thanks to our state's investments in working class families like mine. And from there, I earned a scholarship to become the first in my family to graduate with that 4-year degree. And knowing that it was really the investments of others that made it, an opportunity, it gave me an opportunity to succeed. I really wanted to invest back in our community in whatever way I could. And since I couldn't do so financially, I ended up getting into community service. I served in nonprofits. I worked in community centers and youth centers. I served at Girls Inc., helping with their after-school program with young girls in the community. I served at the United Teen Equality Center in the city of Lowell, working with some of the teens in the community. And really loved investing in that way. But as most working families know, you might love what you do for a day job, but it doesn't always afford you with the opportunity to live with a standard of dignity in the community that you're working hard to serve in. So I was also simultaneously through those years waiting tables and cleaning people's houses and offices to make ends meet. And it was during that time that I actually got offered a job at the State House, working for a state representative. And I remember at the time getting this job offer, Madam Mayor, and saying to myself, man, this is a great job opportunity to go work at the State House. But I remember asking my friend who said this job offer was available and saying, the state legislature, that's great, but what's a state legislator? I didn't know what the legislature was. I didn't know what a state legislator did. I didn't know what a state rep did or a state senator did. I knew about the 3 branches of government. I was taught that in school. But I didn't really know much about state government. I didn't really know much about local government. And that's actually why we need to continue to be passionate advocates for civic education in our public schools, to continue to get more and more robust. Thank you to our school committee members who I'm sure are advocating for such things. But I remember getting this job at the State House. I applied and I got the job, and I went to go work in our state legislature, and I learned about all of the great things that our legislature can do, from investing in our education system, to our public safety system, to our transportation system, to making sure to fight for justice initiatives, to making sure to fight for adequate access to health care for people, and to make sure that our communities are functioning at their best. I learned about all of these great things, but I also, during my very short time working in the legislature, learned about the flip side of how our state government can operate when there's no accountability. And I was actually, during my time working there as a younger woman in my 20s, Mayor DeSimone, I was actually sexually harassed while I was working in our own House of Representatives. And this is a story that's all too common for all too many, right? And I remember working there and trying to deal with what was going on there as a new college graduate working at our State House. And when this was uncovered, the way that they dealt with it was not to actually deal with it. It was to actually just dismiss me from my job. That way the problem would go away. Quietly, in fact, because it wasn't just a dismissal that occurred. It was actually the requirement that I sign away my right to speak about everything that I'd seen, witnessed, or experienced by signing a taxpayer-funded, funded by all of y'all, taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreement meant to silence me about everything I'd seen, witnessed, and experienced behind those closed doors up on Beacon Hill among some of the most powerful politicians in the state of Massachusetts. But I didn't let them get rid of me or keep me quiet. I didn't leave state government like they told me to do. I instead decided to run for state representative myself, and a little over a year later made my way back into that chamber that dismissed me as the youngest woman serving in the House of Representatives at that time. And thank you, Mayor, because let me tell you, this was not something that was part of some 5-year plan or some 10-year plan. I was coming from a city not much different than Attleboro, city Methuen, working up at the State House as a legislative aide to a state rep, first, professional job out of college. And I ended up winning thankfully, and I was incredibly humbled at this opportunity and a little bit scared, and I wanted to make sure that I did the best job that I could. So I put in the effort, really worked hard, and I fought like hell to make sure that working families like ours who have also been dismissed, ignored, or disenfranchised from a system in our state government that's not really serving all working families the way that it could and the way that it should, that I was fighting to make sure that it was functioning better by representing the people in our communities who had felt underserved during that time period. And I served 6 years as a state representative, 4 years as a state senator after that. And yes, there is this trend, apparently, because I was the youngest woman serving in the House at the time, then I was the youngest woman serving in the state Senate, and now I am the youngest constitutional officer. But friends, I'm 42 years old, so I think we just need some more younger people running for office. But friends, it's been my humble honor to have been elected now to serve as your state auditor over the last few years now. And during my time in the legislature, Mayor DeSimone, I took those experiences prior to that, working in community centers, working for these nonprofits, working with small businesses, having my own small little cleaning business, also serving as a legislative aide, seeing what I saw at the State House before I got elected. And during my time in the legislature, one of the biggest things that I was advocating for during that time period was transparency and accountability. And that still is what I'm focusing on as your state auditor. Why? Why out of all of the things that we could be talking about would I stay so focused on transparency, accountability, accessibility, these particular issues? And the reason is because what I learned during my years up at the State House is that regardless of what issue we're talking about, however important it is to you or to me, or to you or to her or to whoever we're talking to, whatever we're talking about, there are so many important issues that we will take up at the State House and in government in general. But the reality is that the decisions that are made about those important issues, while we are under the impression that we are going in to advocate for things in these public hearings and that we're participating in somewhat of a democratic process, what I came to learn through my work at the State House is that a lot of what happens up on Beacon Hill is actually really controlled by just a handful of people up there, just a handful of people. There are a few people who have a lot of power, just a few people who have a lot of power. And those people get to control the vast majority of decision-making that occurs up at our State House. So we'll have 160 state representatives. And these are good people. These are our friends. These are people who are invested in our communities, and they care deeply about the issues that they're advocating for. And then we have 40 senators. And these folks similarly, Republican or Democrat, they're running for the most part because they care about their communities, they want to invest, they want to make a difference, they want to make a positive impact. But when they get there, they learn, many of us learn, that the way that Beacon Hill operates is under a cloak of darkness, where decisions get made just by a few people in a back room, and most of our legislators are up there beating at the door, sort of banging their heads against the wall, trying to get access to be a voice for their communities, to make sure that your voices are heard. And I learned about that when I was advocating for additional funding to come back to our school districts and working on, reevaluating the Chapter 70 funding formula, for example, during my time on the Education Committee. And I learned about these different issues when we were talking to the small business community when I was the Senate chair of the Community Development and Small Business Committee. That when we would draft legislation, when we'd hold hearings and we would hear from all of you, that we would bring that back to the State House leadership only for it to be essentially dismissed and ignored because the leadership had already made up their mind about what they were going to do. And that really lit a fire inside of me to want to work to change that. Because as someone who comes from, again, a community much like this, I know how hard we work for those dollars that we send into that state budget, those tax dollars that you as working families send into our state coffers. You work hard for those tax dollars. You want to make sure that they're being spent efficiently and effectively. You want to make sure that the policy decisions that are being made reflect the values to the best extent they can of this community, and that the policies that are actually being implemented are actually serving this community. But if you're not really being heard, and if you're sort of just shouting at a door that's being closed in your face, is that democracy? It's not, right? Is that a democratic process? It's not. Is that a system that's working for everybody the way that it could and the way that it should? It certainly is not, right? And that's not a partisan issue. This is a good government issue. And that's why I love the work of the State Auditor's Office so much. During those 10 years in the legislature, when we would advocate for whatever it was that our communities needed, it would repeatedly come down to that lack of transparency, that lack of accessibility, that lack of accountability in what was happening behind those closed doors, where we would see policies get passed and bills get passed that we as the senators didn't even have a chance to read. We didn't have a chance to read what was being passed into law. What does that say about everybody else and regular, everyday working families who want nothing more than a seat at the table just to be able to have their voices heard? In the auditor's office, we're able to break down some of those walls. We're able to open up some of these systems in our state government, and some of these things that happen behind the scenes, and we're able to pull back the curtain and we're able to shine a light on some of the darker areas in our state government and point to where some positive changes can be made. We audit state agencies, and before any of you, when I finish talking today, decide to run out of this room, let me just say, I do not audit any of you. I am not the IRS. I'm not the Department of Revenue. I don't audit you personally. We have an office of over 200 employees across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Bill, it's great to see you here. I got a retired employee right here in the back. Thank you so much. And it's great to see so much of this work getting done in our local communities by the over 200 employees, but they don't audit you, they audit state government for you, the taxpayers. They make sure that your tax dollars are being spent efficiently and effectively. And what does that look like? I'm gonna use a very obscure example. I apologize, Madam Mayor, if nobody's ever heard of this agency before, but has anybody here ever heard of the MBTA? So when I was running for state auditor, this was something that was repeatedly brought to our attention. All the candidates that were running, it was talked about constantly. Why? Because we all remember that was a time period where trains were literally catching on fire. There were constant derailments. MBTA safety was, paramount in the news during that time, and it was, what everybody was concerned about. And we had made a commitment to look at safety and performance at the MBTA, and we've been able to actually, in the Office of State Auditor, take a look at the MBTA. And people say, well, the State Auditor's Office, what do you have to do with safety and performance? I think folks, might assume the word auditor, we just do the financial components of analyzing state government, but we actually do a lot more than that. We look at process, procedures, programmatic integrity, performance, and we look at ways to help make government work better. That's actually the mission of our office. It's to help make government work better. So when we looked at the MBTA, we looked at safety in terms of whether or not employees were getting trained on safety. And we found that they weren't always getting trained on safety. And we wrote that in the report. We found that station checks at our MBTA stations were not always occurring in a timely fashion when they should have been occurring. We found issues with the Keolis contract that the MBTA has. Many of you might have heard of that contract. It's a very expensive contract. We found millions of dollars in cost savings that we highlighted to the MBTA in this multi-billion-dollar transportation system, where we said you need to have better service level agreements in your state contracts with these private vendors, because we have millions of dollars in savings opportunities that have been missed as a result of not having appropriate service level agreements in these contracts. We highlighted that to the MBTA. Investing in our transportation system, looking for ways to make it work better. Think about children in the Commonwealth. A lot of people say, what does the auditor's office have to do with serving children in this Commonwealth? Well, we actually just recently released a report of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, where we highlighted areas where the department actually was failing to investigate alleged instances of child abuse and neglect in our local school districts, failing to communicate properly with the Department of Children and Families to make sure that these instances were resolved so that children are protected, highlighting the need to make sure that our departments are functioning at their best, because it's not just about process and procedure at that high level, it's about how that impacts people who are the most underserved and the most at risk amongst us. And speaking of those kids, we also did an audit of the Department of Children and Families, where we took a significant look at mental health services. Most of us know, especially Mayor, after going through the pandemic shutdown period, we know that focusing on mental health is incredibly important. A lot of us, maybe didn't really think of it that much before that time period, but we certainly all thought about it during that time period and afterwards. Now imagine being a little kid in the system, a ward of the state, for example, no family to advocate for you, having just been traumatized by some abusive circumstance, being ripped from your family, and then not having adequate access to those mental health services, having to process that without being provided a therapist or a counselor when you are legally mandated to have one. That's what we highlighted to the Department of Children and Families, those instances where that was occurring with these young children. Antipsychotic medications being prescribed to young children without appropriate oversight of those medications being distributed to these young children, putting these kids at risk, who really need us to be their advocates during one of the most, if not the most traumatic time periods of their lives. Focusing on making sure that the Department of Children and Families is serving our most vulnerable children and their families to the best of their ability, helping make government work better. We audited elder affairs and focused on how elder affairs also had some challenges with these elder abuse and neglect cases, and making sure that they were reported appropriately to the district attorney's offices, and that those cases were actually being handled appropriately so that allegations of elder abuse and neglect were actually being analyzed appropriately so that our elder population, disabled population, is protected. We look at all these different things and all these different areas of state government that I think a lot of people don't associate with the state auditor's office. And the reason why I like to talk about these things is to let you all know that we do look at these things. We are looking at these areas that impact everyday working families like ours. And the reason why we're able to look at these different areas that impact a lot of local families is because local families like yours raise these issues to us and let us know about where you feel that the system is working or not working. We get a lot of our tips from you, the residents, when you come to me and you come to meet with us in our office, when you call me up and say, hey, Diana, there's an issue over at this agency. We want you to look into it. They're failing in some way, and we want to make sure they're better serving our community. We rely on you to let us know where you're seeing those needs occur so that we can go in, we can analyze what's happening, and we can make recommendations for improvements so that people are better served, so that people are protected, and so the Commonwealth is functioning at its best. That's why when we talk about these things, I always find it just a bit disheartening, maybe more than a bit disheartening, that anyone would object to an audit from our office. And I hear some laughter in the room. Some folks might know, we do have an entity in the Commonwealth that is still objecting to an audit by our office, which is meant to help make government work better, to shine a light on these practices, and to let folks know where we can do better so that taxpayers and all residents are better served. And that entity that has been objecting to an audit by our office is our own state legislature, unfortunately. Friends, we put an issue on the ballot. I led the charge on that. Lots of folks here supported that. I want to thank all of you who supported that effort. Mayor DeSimone walked across a portion of the state with me to get that issue on the ballot, to give people a chance to vote for that. And that was question 1 that was on your ballot, to audit the state legislature. And we put that to the voters and we asked you, we said, do you want the Office of State Auditor to audit the state legislature? The same way we audit all these other state entities. And by the way, as we have always done since 1849, which is the inception of the State Auditor's Office, to the tune of over 100 other audits of the state legislature having been conducted of the legislature by my office since 1849. Do we want to return to that past practice? Do we want to solidify this in the law and make sure that it is crystal clear that the Office of State Auditor is to conduct these types of audits of our legislature? You said yes, and you said yes to the tune of 72%. 72% of the vote. Wouldn't you love to get 72% of the vote to all the candidates here? I mean, that's just a great margin. That is a landslide. It is pretty challenging to get for any candidate, to get 72% of the vote. I don't know if Dunkin' Donuts was on the ballot, if Dunkin' Donuts would get 72% of the vote statewide. But this issue spoke to so many of you who really want good government and who were able to join together and cross those party lines and come together as community members who wanted to say, look, we want some transparency and accountability from our state officials and from our state house. And we want to know what's going on. We want to see how those tax dollars are getting spent by our legislature. And we want access to what's happening. And that sent a very loud and clear message to the state legislature, to the Beacon Hill bosses, so to speak, that you want transparency, that you want this audit to happen. But yet, here we are, almost coming up to election season again, coming up on it, almost a year later at this point. And legislators are still blocking this audit. We've tried to sue. We've been blocked from suing, which is a violation of our constitutional right to access an impartial hearing. As citizens of this Commonwealth, we all have the constitutional right to access an impartial hearing. We are being denied that right. We are being denied access to a judge to adjudicate this matter. The legislature could ask for an SJC opinion. They are refusing to do so. And the Speaker of the House has blatantly said that with respect to the law, compliance is in the eye of the beholder. Compliance is in the eye of the beholder. Now, I want to show of hands about how many of you plan on leaving here today, going 80 miles an hour down the road, and then when you get pulled over, looking at the cop and saying, oh, officer. Compliance is in the eye of the beholder. Because certainly you wouldn't do that and that wouldn't go over too well, right? But yet, for these powerful lawmakers who make the laws themselves, some of them, like Mr. Speaker, are under the impression and really believe that they are above the law. They really believe what they're saying, that compliance is in the eye of the beholder, and if they don't view themselves as having to comply, then they don't have to. Why do they believe that? Because they're being allowed to believe that. I have been practically begging our Attorney General's office to enforce the law to no avail. We have a top law enforcement agency in this Commonwealth. It's the only law enforcement agency that we have with respect to enforcing the law in this immediate instance. But we can't get the law enforced. We can't get access to the court, and we can't get lawmakers to comply with the law. So we are now at the point where we are pursuing legal action on our own, having to, unfortunately, get a private attorney at no cost to the taxpayers, by the way, who is willing to represent our office in a court of law and try to take this to court on our own at this point. But friends, we have an uphill battle. We have an uphill battle. Because what I'm learning is there are a lot of friends up on Beacon Hill who, for some reason or another, just don't want to release some documents. Whether those are receipts, whether those are contracts, whether those are procurement procedures, they don't want to release those documents for some reason. That to me is incredibly concerning. It's incredibly concerning. And I will tell you this used to be about this audit that we're trying to conduct. I'm going to tell you that this has become about much more than that at this point. This is no longer about an audit that we're trying to conduct. That was what we started with. We started with a campaign for transparency. We started with a campaign for accountability. We started with, we want to conduct an audit. Where we're at now is we're at a place where democracy in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is being undermined by our top elected officials in this state. That is a very dangerous place to be. I'm a Democrat saying that in a Democratic-led state. You can imagine my popularity up on Beacon Hill right now. But friends, this is the reality. When you have 72% of the Commonwealth go out and vote for an initiative, it's not a recommendation in Massachusetts. It's the law. It's as though the legislature voted for this and the governor signed off on it into law. So when we vote and it passes, it's the law. That's it. End of story. So for our top officials to blatantly violate it and then turn back at us and say that that's just the way it is, deal with it, that is a threat to democracy. That hurts all of us. That's not a partisan issue. That's a power issue. We have a power issue going on up on Beacon Hill right now. And that needs to be dealt with. That culture of power needs to be dealt with. And the only way that it's going to be dealt with is if the people continue to come together, to cross those party lines, to cross those political divides, to come together, to stand up and say back to the State House that we will not be silent. We are going to continue standing up and showing up and letting our voices be heard. And we are going to continue fighting like hell for transparency, accountability, and accessibility. Because without those things, we lose access to all the rest. Without transparency, we don't get a seat at the table. Without accountability, we don't know what our elected officials are doing. So I'm here today to let you know that I want to partner with you as much as is humanly possible. Wherever you come from, wherever your political background is, I want to partner with you. And I am hopeful that in continuing to come together in Attleboro and in the rest of the state of Massachusetts, that we will be able to continue to make a positive impact and keep the pressure up and make sure that change does happen. But we are going to have to continue to stand together and work together in this current climate. So thank you in advance for your partnership. And with that, Madam Mayor, I wanted to open this up for questions so that we can have that dialogue back and forth. Thank you so much, everyone.
I've got a few too, but go ahead. I'm unfortunate, and it's very ironic that the very group that does not want to have an audit is a very group that was against you and, caused you pain when you first started in the legislature. Very kind of ironic that that's kind of happening there. But my actual question is, do you ever have scheduled audits with specific agencies or anything, or is this just when people come and talk to you about situations?
That's a great question. So we actually are required by law to audit over 200 entities at least once every 3 years. Let me tell you how challenging that's been. Because our budget increase has not been as robust as what is necessary to be able to conduct the robust audits that we would like of all 200 plus of those entities. But we are working to meet that mandate and still get those audits done. However, I would very much like for those audits to be able to be more robust and to be more focused on high-risk areas as they arise. For example, the MBTA, I would like to just keep doing audits of the MBTA and then just keep doing some more audits of the MBTA, right? But we do have to move and pivot to go do other entities, like the Board of Library Commissioners, for example, and make sure that we're doing all these other entities within that 3-year time frame. So it can be a challenge, but we're working hard, and we're gonna, hopefully meet that mandate soon. But always would love that appropriate budget that we need to be able to do that work more robustly.
If I may, you mentioned that your goals are transparency, accountability, but in a democracy, transparency, accountability, those are meant to ensure fundamental fairness. And I think ultimately that's what you're seeking, which is what I seek too, which is I believe that the government owes to every citizen is fairness in its operations and its procedures. So I appreciate your mission. I have a question. When you talked about the legislature being behind, who else is behind those closed doors? Because I understand that Massachusetts is one of the most heavily lobbied legislatures in the country, at least as it pertains to certain sectors, and with utility being one. Are there lobbyists in those rooms, or is it just the elected officials? And that may be a very naive question. But
Oh, there are
who else is in the
lobbyists.
room?
There are lobbyists, absolutely.
In the room where the other legislators can't get in.
Yes. And Mayor, to your point, in those rooms, in the halls of power, so to speak, a lot of times the conversation, and this is a little inside baseball for you, but Madam Mayor's asking, the conversations amongst legislators used to be essentially that, we were kind of looking at each other wondering why we had run at the time, if really it was the lobbyists who were going to be the ones who got meetings with the leadership team and not us, right? That a lot of the leadership folks didn't really want to hear from their local reps and their local senators, and we were sort of outside the door trying to bang on the door to get in. But the powerful lobbyists were granted and, granted additional access. So for sure, you want to make sure that if and when those conversations do occur, that those conversations are being had regarding those policy discussions, especially that are being had during a debate, for example, that those are being had where people can participate in that and hear what's going on, and then they can track and follow what's happening. Yeah.
That's huge. I want to go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the things that I've only been on the school committee for one term. This is May, my first term, and one of the first things that we learned about, we had a whole school committee meeting specifically to discuss the open meeting law. Because it's really interesting that at least at the local level, we cannot have a meeting in a back room. It's against the law for us to have meetings that are not public, and for us to not make minutes public and all the work that we do is transparent. And that's true at the city council, it's true throughout local government. And I was absolutely stunned when I found out that is not, I didn't really follow state politics, as just a private citizen until I got involved in Attleboro politics, and I got involved here in trying to do the right thing for the city. I was stunned when I found out that law specifically exempts the state legislature. And so I want to commend you on your initiative in getting one thing. If you have time, let's get a ballot initiative that says the open meeting law applies to everybody. Everybody has to have open meetings. It's so simple and it's so comprehensive. So thank you for your.
So is the city seal here right now? I don't think I'm allowed to advocate for ballot questions right now, but stay tuned. Because there are issues that are coming up that will be raised in the weeks and months to come that definitely folks should stay aware of, that are opportunities to support additional transparency. And I will speak to the need for public records reform as being one of those issues that we should be focused on. Massachusetts, as much as we do get to tout that we lead the nation in many areas, we continue to be ranked as the least transparent state government in the entire nation, not subject to public records laws, open meeting laws, bills getting voted on and passed in the middle of the night, with people not even getting to read these bills. Lots of challenges on the transparency front. And we're the only state in the nation where the legislature, governor's office, and judiciary all get to claim an exemption from the state's public records laws that this library is subject to, that Madam Mayor's office is subject to. Yes. So a lot of folks don't think, that that's the case. I think that there's a lot of, focus on the positive, which is great because we do have a lot of great things going on here in the state of Massachusetts. And I'm humbled and honored to have been able to have been raised in such a great state. Incredibly grateful. Again, got to go to public schools here, got to graduate, got to go to community college. It's because of this state that someone like me had opportunities to succeed. And I love this state. And not but, we can also have, areas that we simultaneously need to improve in. And one of those areas is in transparency. So we should continue to tout all of our successes and all of our achievements very proudly, alongside of recognizing that there is some significant room for improvement in this area where we are dead last in the nation. And that is with respect to transparency in state government, where this culture of power does reign and rule. Yeah, hang on.
Back to the MBTA. Have you, in your audit, have you been successful in getting information on the MBTA pension? I know years back, they would not release that information. Has that changed?
We have not audited the pension system. We have audited safety and performance. We audited the tracks. We audited the Keolis contract. We audited a contract out of Kentucky. But let's chat moving forward. And as we can go along, we can look at areas that, warrant an audit and take everything under consideration and make sure that we're taking a look where we need to take a look.
Side note, I've taken the MBTA twice in the last month. It's vastly improved from a few years ago.
Yeah, you know what? We are really excited about any and all improvements that are being made. And I think that, a lot of folks are working hard. And that's why I think it's important that alongside these audits, I would be remiss not to say that we have so many great workers in this Commonwealth at the MBTA, at the Department of Children and Families, at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, at these facilities that service our elders, for example. It's the systems many times that are broken down. They're outdated. They're underfunded. There's not adequate oversight being provided. And a lot of times there will be a systemic failure, and you have a lot of workers running around trying to pick up the slack for where the system is failing. So our office really does go in and try to assist those workers in pointing out some of those systemic failures and challenges so that they are better able to do their jobs as well. Because to your point, lots and lots of great people working at these agencies like the MBTA, and they need all the help that they can get right now. We want to make sure that we're doing our best to be part of that.
I have two questions, but I just want to bounce off what he said. I'm so glad to hear that the open meeting rule is something you're really taking serious. I lived in a town near here, and the selectmen, the head of the board, would invite all the select men, for a cookout, and they'd all talk about stuff. He did get found out. They did get counseled by the state. They had to have classes. But I was so surprised. They could just have cookouts and talk about stuff in his backyard. So I'm really relieved to hear that's something you're really taking seriously.
Yeah, and a lot of people too up at the State House, there's a fear of retaliation. Having served as a state rep and as a state senator, as much as you will hear me talking about how disgraceful it is that legislative leaders are breaking the law, you will simultaneously hear me talking about how much I love my colleagues in the legislature. They are very much, many of them, working really hard to do their best. There is a lot of fear up there about retaliation from legislative leaders, about just even them speaking up about something that they're advocating for their community. If somebody gets up and says, my local community needs funding for this or funding for that, the library needs support, this, that, the other thing. If the Speaker or Senate President thinks they're talking too much, that's it. You get removed from your committee, you get removed from your office. We all know the story with Senator Markey. Got shoved out into the hallway. But I have to say, it's actually, that was a really salient example, but it's so much worse than that. It is actually so frowned upon to debate publicly and to embarrass the leadership team by pointing out that you disagree with something that they're stating, that they don't just put your desk in the hallway anymore, take away your staff and take away your chairmanship along with the stipend that came with it. They retaliate against your district. They retaliate against your community. They will go after your school funding. They will go after your community center funding. They will take away the earmarks that your legislator is trying to get for that senior center bus or that fire truck or whatever it is that they're looking to get for your local community, they will be punished for speaking out in that building. So keep that in mind. I know I ask people constantly, please call your legislator and advocate and tell them please to support this, but simultaneously understand what they are up against up there. It is not an easy environment. I entered into that, that building having a little bit more of a clear picture about what was going on there because of the circumstances that I told you about, right? But a lot of people get elected, they weren't harassed before. They weren't harassed in the same building they then went to go work in, right? So a lot of people get elected, they want to go in, they want to do their best and serve their community and make friends with people and just try to go along to get stuff for their community, right? And get some stuff done. But if they talk in public, they soon find out that they're retaliated against. So that open meeting issue, it's a huge issue, not just legally, but culturally. Culturally, that even if it is something that does become law, we have a cultural issue to overcome up there where there's just fear to say anything that the leaders disagree with.
My first question really was, what are you asking them for? And is this stepping on their culture? Even though it has a history, you have a history of audits, and they've had audits. So is this a cultural issue that they don't want you to do it?
It's that.
Because it's your job.
It's that 100%, and it's also, it's arrogance on the part of legislative leaders. They're used to not having to really do anything they don't want to do. I mean, really. When you hear things like compliance is in the eye of the beholder, and, well, you have the power to go to the SJC, Mr. Speaker, why aren't you? Well, I've already made my decision, why would I do that? There is a culture of power, and there is a culture of fear operating hand in hand up in that building. And it is those things combined, but it is also, unfortunately, potentially, that there is something to hide. Because at this point, Madam Mayor, I have to say, if there's nothing to hide, why not just get the audit over with? Let's just get it done. We've actually agreed to limit the scope of the audit this time around because, you keep hearing, well, they're so concerned that we're going to look at other issues that they don't really want us looking at. We've said, look, we're going to stick to financial issues this time around, and we're going to stick to state contracting and procurement procedures. And that's going to be what we're looking at for this audit because those are high-risk areas, and at least let's just get that done. If there's a future audit, we'll talk about that in the future. But right now, let's just get this audit done. Let's look at those financials. Let's look at those receipts and those financial documents and how you contract with your private vendors. And let's make sure that that's all being done legally and ethically, right? Makes sense. Those are some simple things. Those certainly don't violate the Constitution. They don't interfere with the work of the legislature. Those are financial documents and state contracting documents. Those are documents that every government has. Can't get access though. So our question is, what are they hiding? Madam Mayor, I don't know if you want to proceed.
Can I ask one more question? This may be a dumb question. Does 30B apply to this state? Are they subject to the same procurement laws we are?
So 30B is for municipalities, but there are similar provisions for state agencies that we do have to follow certain standards, certain protocols when it comes to procurement, and make sure, for example, that if a bidding process is required, that we are going out to bid. We've audited agencies recently where we found that no bid occurred in the granting of contracts and the millions of our taxpayer dollars. Rationale was given for why that occurred. Our office cited the agencies for not following the bidding laws and the contracting laws and making sure that we were going after the best services for the best cost. We do cite agencies for that when they do not follow the law or regulations in that regard. Certainly, we would hope that the legislature would want to hear if they're improperly executing contracts, but we do have significant concerns around that. And I hope that when we finally get access, that this does just turn out to be just having been arrogance on the part of legislative leaders, because it would be incredibly unfortunate to find that there have been potential issues in those areas. We certainly hope that that's not the case, but obviously we're concerned until we get access. Trust, but verify.
Can I ask one more question? So respectfully, you do an audit, you make findings. Do you have an enforcement authority, or do you turn it over to the Inspector General to enforce your findings?
So, not the Inspector General's office, but the Inspector General, just so all y'all know, if you want me to audit any municipalities or local agencies, that's under the purview of the Inspector General's office. I always get this question from people who want to know if I can audit these local facilities. We audit state agencies, state entities, like the ones that I mentioned to you. The Inspector General has municipal government under their purview. The Attorney General, though, Madam Mayor, the Attorney General is who we go to for that law enforcement aspect. And we have been successful in terms of working with the Attorney General to enforce the law with other entities who refuse to comply with our audits. But unfortunately, legislative leaders get a pass because of how much power they hold and because they hold the purse strings to fund the same offices that they are funding. So, or that they are supposed to be held accountable by.
More questions?
Were you in the legislature back in the day when we had a referendum question with term limits? And immediately as the legislation met, they downed those term limit laws.
I was not. I started in 2013. I got elected in 2012. Yes. But I heard all about it. Believe me, I've heard all the stories at this point now. Now everybody comes to me and tells me everything, whether I want to know about it or not, Madam Mayor.
Very good. Any parting thoughts or questions for the auditor?
So you mentioned the SJC.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go there? Why don't you just do it?
We're trying to. So we are trying to go there. We have an attorney who's working with our office right now. We're going to try to go to court without the support of the AG. The AG has said she's going to work to block us, essentially, and says she is not going to approve our use of our own attorney, and she's going to raise issues with this. She has also alleged that my office has withheld information from her and that has somehow prevented her from suing the legislature and enforcing the law. And I had no idea that someone with their psychology and Spanish degree, who's a non-attorney, who works in a separate office, could be the cause of our top law enforcement official in this state not enforcing the law. But yet that's what I'm hearing from our Attorney General right now, is that it's because of my office that we haven't given her something she needs. So what I've suggested for Madam Attorney General to do, and what I have called on her to do, is if that's true, then it is her obligation to sue me and to take me to court so that she can get the documents that she needs, that she alleges she's not being provided with, because it is her obligation to enforce the law. And my office will not be scapegoated for another office's refusal to do their job. So we're happy to go in, let a court tell us whatever we can provide. We want to make sure that the Attorney General's office has it so that they can do their job and enforce the law. But we're trying our best to give them information, and if they need more, I've let the Attorney General know quite clearly that I expect her to sue my office for that information, because the law needs to get enforced, and if that means that I need to meet folks in court to get that done, I'm more than happy to do that. We want to be partners in making sure that the law gets followed.
Has that happened before? No. Okay. Interesting.
Just like a perspective question. I used to work in accounting. What amount of money would be sort of like under your, and I'm glad you're doing it, what amount of money would be sort of like evaluated eventually if you could get to all of this? Like what dollar figure? Like you could describe a company by the total revenue, or what would be some big numbers, just so we can have some thoughts about what is involved?
In the millions, not the billions, in the millions of dollars. In the millions of dollars. And we wouldn't be able to do a full forensic financial audit. Just to be clear, our office is not equipped to be able to do that. We don't have the resources to be able to do that. Even though I would very much like to be able to do something like that in some of these entities of state government, we are actually called upon by law. And I will have a lot of folks call and say, why didn't you audit this, or why didn't you audit that? We're just not resourced to audit with a wide net cast out and just see whatever comes back. We have to hone in on certain issues that are raised to us and take a look at specific areas where we are looking to improve services in some way or uncover something that is problematic, right? So we wouldn't be able to do a full forensic audit, but we would be able to analyze those contracting procedures, procurement procedures, financial receipts having to do with certain time periods, and take a look in some of those higher risk areas that have been raised to our office where we want to take a look, make sure we're getting some transparency around what's happening and putting that out there to you.
Everybody good?
Yeah, sure.
So it sounds like this is a unique problem to Massachusetts, correct? Where you're trying to audit the state legislator and you can't. Has any other state auditors reached out or provided some help to you in order to address this problem?
Yeah, I have talked to a lot of folks about this. The most meaningful conversation that I had that was very helpful to me during a time where I was kind of starting to doubt myself on this. And I was like, what did I get myself into? It was actually because I was new, and I was like, hey, we're going to bring back this past practice of auditing the legislature. This was done. Former auditor Joe DiNucci audited the legislature. A lot of folks don't know that. He did. He audited the legislature. And then the speaker at the time, when he went in to go back in for his audit, was like, you're not auditing me, essentially. And that's when the audit stopped. But he did fight against that. And I thought about that, and I spoke to the Connecticut state auditor. And he said, he was the head of the National Association of State Auditors at the time. And he said to me, what is going on up there? He was like, we're hearing all about this. He's like, I audit the legislature so often as a matter of routine. He's like, you can't get the press to do a story on this. He's like, it's just a non-story. We go in, we look at the procedural stuff, we look at what we need to look at with respect to the financials, we put that out there, it's a report, everybody looks, they have access to it, done. And he was pretty shocked at the way that this was being treated in Massachusetts because, again, he said it was such a matter of routine that it barely even made the press. So it is different what's going on here, and different states have different rules around, how they, in their state government, do these types of reviews. Just like we in Massachusetts made our law here about what we are going to do. And we subjected the legislature to the same reviews that everyone else gets. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to conduct the same review that you told us to do under the law that you all passed. Yeah.
I just very quickly to touch on the retaliation. I just want to say personally thank you for taking on this battle. It can't be easy for you professionally, but also in the back of your head with the political craziness and threats personally. So thank you for taking up this fight, because I don't know how to have the best of it.
Thank you. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and it's kind of all in front of you, and you just gotta just go like this and just go out the door. And I know you all do that in your daily lives as well, right? On the tough days. So I think just sticking together as members of the community, you are actually who inspires me every day to keep doing this, because if I stayed up at the State House and that's where I hung out, there'd be no way. But coming out, I am very blessed. I have all of you, and you have me right back. So thank you so much for the support. Yeah.
I don't know if you listen to them, but Jim Brownie and Marjorie Egan, a day doesn't go by that they don't talk about this issue. And so if anybody listens to Jim and Marjorie on WGBH from 11 to 2, you'll probably hear about it. That's one of his.
Jim is very, very passionate about public records reform. He's made that very clear since the beginning, and I think it's great. I also think it's great that he invited the Attorney General to join me on his show, to have this discussion, to talk about this publicly. We'll see how that goes. I know the invite's in the mail, so we'll see if anybody cares to join me on there. I don't know, but I know. No, but I have agreed to do that. I would love to talk about this as much as possible and to have my colleagues discuss this, debate this, talk about this, and come to an agreement, hopefully, at some point about what needs to get done. But to continue to avoid this, to scapegoat other offices, to let this just to continue to get ignored forever and ever and ever, and be left unsettled, that's unacceptable. So we're going to keep pushing to just continue to air out what's going on and do that on the air, hopefully. So stay tuned. We'll see if we get joined, but you may be hearing from me and my wonderful colleague from the Attorney General's office at some point soon, hopefully, so we can talk about this issue.
Is there anything that we can do as citizens to help you make your job easier in this situation?
Just keep supporting this effort. And you know what helps, folks? There's a lot of partisan division right now. Okay, there is. I have my party that I'm registered in. I love being a Democrat, I will tell you that. And I know that bothers a lot of my friends and my family during holidays, especially when the wine starts flowing and people like to tell me what they think about that. But here's what I'll tell you. This is something that brings people together, and we really need to come together during this time. It is hyper partisan right now. It is too much, okay? It is too much of a divide, and a house divided cannot stand, okay? So if we are going to actually hold Beacon Hill to account for all of us, regardless of if you're the most conservative or most liberal person in the state of Massachusetts, fantastic. You have a right to have your beliefs. Please continue to work together with people who have differing views from you and continue to have conversations with them. I can't tell you how often I get a phone call with somebody enraged at me that I spoke to a Republican town committee, as a Democrat, or that, somebody with a differing viewpoint than me on some other issue was standing with me to support the audit or public records reform or something like the open meeting law, right? I mean, something that we joined together on. So it's okay to have these differences. If we're passionate about things, we need to fight for our beliefs and fight for what we believe is right, of course. And there is a time for that. And keep doing what you believe is right and standing up for your values, of course. But please come together where we can on issues like this. Good government is a nonpartisan issue. I keep saying that over and over again. You want to fight about tax policy? Have a great time, okay? But on good government, we have to come together, okay? And we have to continue to search for areas where we can come together, because we all live here, we all work here, we all want peace, we all want prosperity for our families, we all want to make sure that the Commonwealth is functioning at its best, we all want leaders we can trust, okay? And we all want to know our tax dollars are being spent appropriately. We might agree to disagree on how they're getting spent once we know, and ask our leaders to vote certain ways on where to direct that money and how to better spend that money, but we all want to know so that we can have that opinion, right? So just please continue to come together. That's my ask. I appreciate the encouragement, I appreciate the support, but more than anything, what helps is when people come together for what is right and they can look past those differences. Yeah. Agreed. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate this today.
Hold on. Sorry about that.